Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Ball is Round. I'm Hady Raphael, and tonight on the show, CF Montreal played two preseason games against Atlanta United and the Colorado Rapids. Beth Priestman chooses her final squad for the W Gold Cup, and we'll take a look at the W Gold Cup, the schedules, and everything around the Canadian national team. That and a lot more on episode 166 of The Ball is Round. And I'm joined this evening by my good friend, Eve Powell. Hey, Eve, how are you today?
I am doing all right on this Super Bowl Sunday. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. We just wanted to start by apologizing to people to record or to go live during the Super Bowl. I don't really watch the Super Bowl. I don't have any problems with it or whatever, but I don't really watch it. And at the same time, unfortunately, we have some busy schedules, so we couldn't really record any anywhere else or anytime, any other time, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
that's why.
But we're grateful if you're here with us this evening, even if it's
Exactly.
even if it's just in between the commercial breaks.
Exactly. So thank you very much for always being here with us. So today, of course, unfortunately, Elias will not be here with us this evening. But even I will keep you entertained, I'm pretty sure.
We'll try, if nothing.
So let's start right away to talk about CF Montreal. CF Montreal during its preseason right now, two games to play. They played their first televised game on Wednesday against Atlanta United in Orlando. So yes, a loss, 2-1 loss. But it was nice to finally watch a game from CF Montreal, right?
Very much so. Yeah, I think back in quote unquote the old days, the the streamed games were kind of like a highlight. They were low quality, bad production value. I will say the Atlanta United stream was like a decent production value. Good, like kudos to them, hats off, and also thanks for not geo blocking it. Yeah, it was. It's always nice to kind of see if the hype that you've been building in the off season actually kind of holds water. Of course, it can be easy to get carried away with a heavy preseason win, and it can be easy to get carried away on the other end too in case of a heavy preseason loss, which we will talk about later. But yeah, no, it's always good fun and kind of get a sense of the new signings and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so Roberto is saying hi and he's multitasking tonight. Thank you very much for
We
being with us,
appreciate you.
Really, really appreciate you. So yeah, no, I agree. Now, like it's always tough to go with a loss, of course. It wasn't such a tough loss on this game. It was on the next one, and like you said, we'll talk about it a bit later. So let's talk about that first game against Atlanta. We're not going to go through lineups and everything. It's not going to be a play-by-play thing like we usually do during the regular season. We're just going to talk about some major talking points. Go through, some major talking points because it's not really relevant to go through play-by-play. It's a friendly game. It was 4 halves of 30 minutes, so it's completely all over the place, and it's not really worth it to really go dig deep in it.
No.
But there are a few discussions that need to be had.
Totally.
First of all, Sebastian Breza. The first goal he conceded in the Atlanta game. I'm sorry, but he looked like not even a PLSQ goalkeeper. That's how bad he was on that play. Do you agree with me?
I mean, I think I think you've made your feelings about this player like super clear by
Really?
now.
Did I?
I'm pretty confident, yeah. So I think probably for me, yes, you're being it was absolutely a disaster, 100%, and unfortunately, it was also a disaster in the second match. Different story or different type of disaster, but still.
Is it a
I
different type of disaster in
I
the
don't know.
second game? Because in the second game, from he only played 30 minutes, and then we're
Yeah,
reserved
exactly.
by Ketterer.
Canterbury,
So,
yeah, exactly.
so for me,
Um, okay, whatever. It was a disaster, 100%. But I think it's unkind to read that much into a preseason goal concession. I really do. Um, I'm not saying that I thought his performance was remotely encouraging. I didn't like practically anything about his performance in, but I think to go so far as to say like, I don't know. It's not words that I would use to describe it. How's that?
on that play, he looked like worse than a PLSQ
He looked like he
goalkeeper.
got very, very caught unaware
That's
somehow. I don't know how. I don't know.
There was nobody
I find it really hard to explain.
exactly. So since when you're nice? Where's Eve?
Sorry. Sorry. Do you want me to
No,
go make myself a drink or something?
yeah, I think you need a couple of drinks. No, but honestly, it's nothing. I know I don't like returns. I don't like the guy as, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the guy. Even if, I asked around a bit, and people have told me that he's really great in the dressing room. That was one of my concerns. And they
Mhm.
told me, no, 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 he's really a nice guy and he won't make any fuss being number two or whatever. But still, I'm sorry, but like, if I'm a defender and playing in front of Sebastian Breza, I'm not really in confidence, and
No.
we've seen it. We've seen it during that game.
I think it looks almost like he picked up where he left off in 2022. That's how
Yeah,
I feel.
exactly. And in 2022, we finished second in the East. So
But
yeah.
he wasn't the goalkeeper that ended the season.
Yeah, true, exactly.
So
But still,
I don't
he
even.
still he played a lot of
He
games.
did. He did. Well, he played a lot more minutes than I think any one of us thought he should have.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. So no, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like his time away from the club. And again, I want to say this with a caveat that reading into a preseason performance is just ridiculous. Or reading this deeply into it is probably a little much.
Of course.
But it doesn't seem as though his time away from the club has changed much of what we knew him to offer as a goalkeeper.
We have a
Unfortunately,
question.
Mhm.
We have a question regarding Breza from Michael, and he asked if Breza is it an Olivier Renard choice or an obligation coming from Bologna that wanted to get rid of him?
And you're
What do you
asking
think?
around. Did you find out?
Honestly, I did ask around. I didn't get an answer,
Okay.
but knowing,
Go ahead.
I really don't think that it was an obligation.
No.
I don't think it's possible for Bologna to have that kind of authority of over CF Montreal.
Mhm.
So I just think that it makes sense for Breza to be here as a number two
Likewise.
in a way, even if I still don't like it. But it does make sense in a way because he's not gonna cost a lot. He knows the city, he knows everything, he knows his place now because he's gonna be number two.
You know
Never
some of
gonna
the
be number one.
players.
He knows a few players. He knows the languages. He speaks.
You know some of
He
the coaching
speaks.
staff. Sure.
He knows a bit of the school coaching staffs. He can help. From behind in a certain way. So I don't know. I don't see it as an obligation, and I really doubt that
It would
would be an
surprise me a
obligation.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same. So hope we answered your question, Michael. Now, of course, this was the first goal, 1-0. But of course, there was four, like I said, 4 halves of 30 minutes. And this first 60 minutes, 60
From a
minutes
Montreal
of
perspective,
boredom,
it was useless.
nothing created,
No,
nothing at all, not even a half chance,
no,
no good movements, nothing. Now, of
and
course, it was a very well rotated squad, right? Nothing, not a
yeah,
lot of starters or
which is
anything in
why,
that.
like, again, I wasn't panicking. Was I bored?
No,
Absolutely, but I wasn't like, oh my god, this is what we're in for every single minute of 2024. Um, but yeah, I didn't enjoy that 60 minutes. I'll tell you that.
yeah, it was bad, like really really bad. There wasn't anything else that jumped
No.
to our mind to really talk about during the first 60 minutes. But then when the 61st minutes was kicked off, that was really fun. There was a few things that were created. First shots on target from Ariel Lassiter. What do you think will be his role this year? Because last year, when the deal went through between
Mhm.
Kamal Miller and 1.3 million GAM for Duke and Lassiter, the pièce de résistance was Bryce Duke.
Mhm.
It wasn't Ariel Lassiter. And right now, it feels like Ariel Lassiter is the most important player between the two in a certain way. Do you think he's going to have a big role this year like he did last year under Losada?
Yes. Uh I think he certainly could because he is a versatile player. Obviously Raheem Edwards probably does have a leg up on him at the left wing back position if that's the formation that uh, Courtois wants to go with, which it seems like he is going to play a three at the back, at least from what we've learned from our limited information to date. And we know as well that's not Lassiter's preferred position for himself either. That being said, he can also play, higher up on the pitch. So I do kind of anticipate his role changing a little bit, especially because he can be very dynamic in attack, as we saw as the creator of the first shot on target after a mere 60 minutes. So I can see him playing more of a supporting role, perhaps in the attack, and perhaps filling in, if Raheem Edwards picks up an injury, just needs to be rotated because of congestion, what have you.
Yeah, exactly, because he can play up front as a striker. He can play as an offensive midfielder also if they play in a 3-4-3,
Yeah.
and he can also play as a left wing back. And I liked what Laurent Courtois said. He said, for me, every player needs to be able at that stage
Mm-hmm.
of the soccer pyramid, you should be able to play at least 2 3 positions.
Yeah.
So he likes those versatile players,
Mm-hmm.
not because he's going to switch people around. It's just that sometimes, you're going to ask, even if you're in the midfield, you're going to have a more defensive role or a more
Yeah.
offensive role or whatever. So he's going to be able to play with things a bit more if you have versatile players. So I feel that Aaron Lassiter will have a big chunk of minutes because he's able to play in those positions. He also at one point played as a right wing back too, so he can help also
Yeah.
at that position. He wasn't really at ease with it,
I
but like
I was
whatever.
gonna say I wouldn't like make that your first choice.
No, but like if you
Yeah.
switch things around for a couple of plays, that could be interesting, right? So
Sure.
if you switch your two wing backs, you put your left wing back on the right and the right on the
Yeah.
left, that could mess things up. That could uh,
Yeah, but I wouldn't
be
necessarily do it for the full duration of a game
no, no, no,
unless
no.
you
I,
had
I
to.
I doubt it very much unless you have to, but you have enough people that can play, you know, the right wing back position to
Mhm.
use him at that position either.
Exactly.
So it's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting to see Lassiter go this year. I think we both agree on his role that he's going to play quite a few minutes.
Mhm.
Um, Moving on, we talked about Breza and the fact that he conceded a goal and the first goal, but right after, second goal conceded, and again a mistake. Sirois giving a pass to Nathan Saliba
Mhm.
that wasn't really expecting it.
No.
and then it's 2-0 in an empty net, goal from Atlanta. Um, we talked about Sirois and how great he was last year for CF Montreal, but we also said that if he has something to improve on is his ball distribution.
Yeah.
Playing that role now with Laurent Courtois,
Mm-hmm.
how damaging this could be for his season, Jonathan Sirois, or do you think it's going to help him improve faster?
I mean, it's going to be very sink or swim, I think. If the ball distribution doesn't improve, I guess we have to hope that Logan Ketterer can distribute a ball from his feet. Because for me, if it doesn't improve, it seems as though this is very, very important to Laurent Courtois based on what we were able to see. It was almost like with the 2021 Wilfried Nancy rigidity of insisting on playing out of the back. You know what I mean? Like there was not a lot of variation, it felt, from when the goalkeeper had the ball and had to distribute it. So if that's the case, then he's going to have to unfortunately pick it up very quick, or Montreal is going to be in very hot water, as we were accustomed to in the early days of the playing out of the back.
Yeah, but the thing is, and we have a question from Dr. Foot regarding that. We can maybe put it right away on the screen.
2 seconds here to get to it. There.
So his question is, is the CF Montreal preseason results worrying? What do you think about the high positioning of goalkeepers with that Courtois requests? Is it a good or bad idea for Breza and Sirois? Because we talked about the distribution, but also the positioning of the goalkeeper.
Oh my God!
Attacking,
risky soccer.
When you're in an attacking position, they play as a central defender.
It's like a true sweeper keeper. It's like the most sweeperiest keeper I've ever seen.
Exactly, it's a real sweeper keeper. So, what do you think? Do you think we have this profile? Do you think that is it realistic for Laurent Courtois to try that with players like Jonathan Sirois, Sébastien Breza, and Logan Ketterer? Is it a bit too risky, like Risky Wilmer, or is it like is it something that you can live with?
I don't think it's. I think like the level to have those keepers playing as high as they were, I think is very unrealistic based on what we know about their ability to deal with the ball at their feet. I think there needs to be a little bit more flexibility. So, I think if we look at the Saliba instance, if your only option is a guy who doesn't seem super ready to receive a pass, then I think Courtois needs to be able to give the okay to go long and, choose a slightly safer option. I don't think it's like, I don't think you have to be completely married to playing short all of the time. Like, to me, that's just unrealistic.
Yeah, but even if you play long, like what's really worrying is the positioning, because
yes,
even if you play long, that ball can come back very fast.
Yeah,
and
true
you
story.
Get chipped. So that's what's a bit worrying, I think, for Dr. Foot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, the distribution still remains the most worrying factor for me. It really does. Because, I mean, you can distribute it poorly from, within your own box or on your 6-yard line or whatever, or you can distribute it poorly if you're playing much higher up the pitch, and you can get burned in both scenarios. So I don't know. For me, that remains the most pressing concern to resolve. Obviously, Sébastien Breza's positioning has never been like much to write home about, no matter what. So if he's told to go long, he'll probably just be happy with that. Maybe. But as for Jonathan Sirois, like I could see it potentially being an adjustment for him, because I think he was a little bit more flexible and dynamic in his positioning last season.
Mm-hmm.
And there were probably times that he was even a bit more conservative in his positioning than he could have gotten away with. So I can see it potentially being an adjustment for him. And of course, anytime you're asking a player to learn something new, especially in season on the fly, it's bound to have some trial and error components.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not too worried because I like the communication of Laurent Courtois saying we're going to play risky soccer, and I think that at one point you need to make those mistakes in order to learn. And I'm talking about Sirois, not Breza. So it's gonna be a learning curve for Jonathan Sirois. In a way, this is gonna be year one for Laurent Courtois. Like, I know we're very excited and everything, but it's a thing on a it's not something that's going to work from year one, in my opinion. I think we're going to be much more dangerous in year two of Laurent Courtois, so in 2025. But I think in 2024 we're going to start to build something a bit like Nancy did in his first season. Building the core of the team, and the foundations of the team, the foundations of the system. So, and this is going to be a part of the foundations of the system, having the goalkeeper play as a sweeper keeper, and they're going to have to learn. There's no other choice. And I think that Jonathan Sirois is intelligent enough to learn. And that's what's important. Your number one needs to learn this, and that's it.
We're just going to have to bear with those growing pains.
Exactly. So I'm not too concerned. I think it's the right mentality to have, as long as we're ready to accept the errors and also accept the backlash from the fans, because the fans are not going to be happy. So hopefully they'll be able to be
and hopefully
to be patient.
Joey Saputo can also restrain himself from wandering into an errant locker room.
I think he learned the hard way, Joey Saputo. But
one would sincerely hope. If not, we're done.
We hope. Exactly. So moving on. After that 2-0, that was the final 30 minutes, and that's where we saw some very interesting changes from Laurent Courtois, putting Matthias Kokaro, putting Dominic Yankov, and with Mathieu Chouanière staying on the pitch also for the second 30 minutes too. Mathieu Chouanière was very lively. He's the one that really created the first goal with the thundering shot on goal. Of course, it was right on the keeper, but it was so powerful that the keeper could only parry it. And it came to Yankov that controlled it with his chest and then scored the goal 2-1 for Atlanta. But first goal for Dominic Yankov.
Yep.
Nice bit of technical skills from Yankov, right?
Yeah, for sure. It was I think it was a good instinct to react that quickly, because obviously the ball parried by the keeper came to him. He was really, really at close range. When that ball came to him, it was good control, quick finish. Obviously, from that close, it's going to be really hard to miss the net. Not that we haven't seen players do it. Composed. I think whatever you would want to see.
Yeah, exactly. I really liked it, and I liked the way he played. Very offensive-minded. Very, waiting for any kind of error to really make an impact in a certain way. So I really liked Dominic Yankov and the way he played. He's seems very attracted by the goal, and which is good, because that's what you need in a number 10. No need to break anything. It's okay.
So sorry about that. My coaster is stuck to my glass.
Now, right after, of course, the game finished 2-1. There was two big chances, one for Kokaro and one for Mathieu Chouanière. I want to talk about those two players. I'm not going to talk about the chances. They didn't score. Okay, for that. How important will Mathieu Chouanière be this season for the club? Do you think that he has to be the best player on the pitch this year? Does he have that kind of pressure?
To be the absolute best, like, I mean, technically speaking, I think there are going to be more technically gifted players than him on the pitch. So I think that's unrealistic to ask for. So I don't
I'm
know
talking
exactly.
overall best player on the pitch.
Does he have to be?
I'm asking. That's the question.
I don't think so. I'm not sure exactly where you're getting this question from. Like, I'm not sure what made you think of it, I guess. Personally, no, I don't think he needs to be the absolute best. I think he is obviously a consummate professional and an athlete, and he'll want to be absolutely the best that he can be on the pitch, and represent his club and his city. That being said, we know that he's probably going to end up once again playing several different roles throughout the season, and some of them he's more strongly suited to than others, as we've seen in the past. And I'm just speculating, like, full disclosure here, but there's so many matches happening this season with the different competitions, and of course the schedule is always super jam-packed no matter what. So we can anticipate a lot of rotation, and he's generally a player with a lot of stamina. So I expect Laurent Courtois to be calling on him really often. So I think it's going to be impossible to ask for him to be the very best player on the pitch 34 games in MLS out of the season.
I disagree in a certain way. For me, Mathieu Choinière had a great year in 2023 in a very disappointing season. He was the player of the season. He was called up to the All-Star game. He made a name to himself. He was called up to the national team, even if, of course, he's not like a regular call-up. He was still called up once. I feel that Mathieu Choinière right now, we're expecting a lot more from him, and he has to be the best player on the pitch. When I say the best player on the pitch, means he cannot have an okay game. He needs to be better than that. He needs to carry that team. He's, for me, the all-star in that team. He's the one that's supposed to bring that extra oomph, that extra quality, that extra goal, that extra effort. He's the one that's going to be the centerpiece of that team, in my opinion. So I think there's a lot of pressure on him to confirm the season that he had, which was great in 2023. He needs to confirm it by having a great season again this year. So be the best player on the pitch most of the time. Of course, it's impossible to be the best player 34 games and in all competitions for 45 games, whatever it is. But most of the games, he has to be there. He has to be one of the best. Yeah, in my opinion. Second question, Matthias Kokero. Such an impact this guy had on the pitch when he came in.
He brings the intensity, that's for sure.
How important is that
I think it's going to be very
Montreal
important.
Squad?
I think especially, we compare to 2023, and I think you can definitely point to some moments where the team lacked character out there on the pitch, and they lacked that kind of no holds barred style of play. And he seems to be a player who is extremely competitive, who hates losing the ball, who you can definitely see shades of Romel Kyoto in him. Yeah, I think he's going to be very entertaining to watch. And sometimes I think for worse than for better, depending on the intensity of the tackles that he wants to make. But yeah, I think he's going to be quite impactful.
Yeah, I think he's going to be great. I read his story also from Nick Landry from
that was
LS.
very touching. Yeah,
very touching story. He came from nothing. And he's just happy to be in a city where he's able to sleep and eat, which is those basic demands that any human being, ask for. He's just that happy to just have them. So, which is for me very interesting. This guy is I think he's gonna fight on the pitch every second of every game. And yeah, sometimes it's going to be a bit too aggressive. Sometimes it's going to be a bit, he's going to make some mistakes for sure. But the he's gonna have that grinta that we're
Yep.
looking for, and I think that's gonna be very 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 exciting, but also very contagious. Hopefully, on the rest of the squad. So I really like what I saw. I just want him to get some, get a bit more minutes. So we can watch him play,
Yeah.
and analyze him a bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hopefully we'll see a bit more from him. But a very interesting storyline with
If
Matias
not, we'll see you in
Kokau.
a couple of weeks, I guess.
Exactly, in a couple of weeks. Next game was in Colorado, not in Colorado, against Colorado, the Rapids, still in Florida. A defeat, a 6-2 defeat. We're not going to talk a lot about it. We're just going to talk about two things. First of all, the two goal scorers. And second of all, we'll talk also about the meaning, if there is some sort of meaning to that result. Um, so let's start about the goal scorer. Eve, what did you think about those two goal scorers? The Montreal was down 2-0
Yep.
and was able to tie things up before conceding 4 goals.
Sorry, the end of your sentence was like, oh. Great to see Yankov score, I think, for consecutive matches. Unfortunately, we don't know really how it came about, but I love to see that happen. I think despite the result, hopefully that will, help him continue to kind of build confidence, and maybe he can actually start the season with a little bit of momentum on his side, bright and early. So love that. Of course, Nathan Saliba, unfortunately, he didn't score any goals last year in MLS, if I'm not mistaken. I don't recall any.
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I'll look it up.
Okay, thanks. So it would have been so cool to see Nathan Saliba's goal, because he is not really a goal scoring machine. He did get some assists, I know, but that's kind of about it. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it, so again, can't comment too much. But interesting to see that both of the goals came from midfielders.
Yeah, very interesting. No goals for Nathan Saliba, all competitions last year. So he didn't even score in Canadian Championship, in Leagues Cup, or in MLS. So,
yep.
So yeah, very interesting for him to open up his tally, and it's going to be important for him to score from time to time. Also, if he wants to be, in the starting 11, because right now the midfielders need to score goals. That's going to be important, and it starts to be very important in modern soccer. I agree. I love the fact that Yankov is getting 2 goals in 2 games. I think that's going to be very important for an offensive midfielder, and I completely agree with you. About that result, okay? I've seen so many people, talk about that result, how much the club sucks, how much we.
Okay, I didn't see that. I don't know what you're reading.
Oh yeah, I saw that, and some people asking to change formation, and some people, why are we not playing with a back four and stuff like that. I'm gonna start this time around, guys. It's a preseason game. 1, 2, we're not even playing with our starting 11. We're playing with Alessandro Biello as a central defender. We're playing with Usman Jabang. We're playing, with a lot of players that are not going to have significant minutes in the lineup, and that don't know each other very well. Because I'm not blaming the players individually. I'm just thinking out loud and looking at stuff and saying, you know what, guys, just give them a chance to know each other, to learn about themselves, to learn about the way Laurent Courtois wants to play before judging them. And even the first game of the season in Orlando we will not be a finished product. It's going to take time for CF Montreal to show their true colors and to show their true level of play. So we need to be very patient. And again, as you can see, patient is the key word today. Patience is a virtue is the name of the show, because we're gonna have to be very patient this year, at least for the first few weeks, few months of the season. Eve, anything else to add on that result?
No,
Because
no, no. Just like you said, I mean, obviously a spanking is never fun to read about, but especially without having been able to actually see how things transpired,
yeah, yeah,
I think it's really difficult to draw any conclusions at all whatsoever. So I'm not worried.
yeah, not at
It's going to
all.
take more than that to worry me. Ask me in 2 weeks after they've played a match, and I'll be able to give you a little bit more of a sentiment. Um, yeah, that's all. And whatever, and this what you had said as well, about the lineup, who was out there, so on and so forth. I agree with you on that as well.
Very interesting question again from Michael. Do you think that Piet and Wanyama will start the season on the bench? Uh, it's weird because a lot of times in those 2-3 games that when we saw the lineups, we
Mhm.
saw Chouanière and Saliba start together.
Yeah.
I think a couple of times, and we saw Piet and Wanyama start together a couple of times. So do you think those are going to be the two duos, or do you think that it's just Courtois trying things for now?
Uh, you know, I feel like the final preseason match is going to be kind of the one that gives us the best hint. Because of course
We're not
that's
going to
kind
be
of
able to watch it, right? Because we do have Montreal has a game against a university also
yes,
that we're
yes,
not going to be able to watch for sure. So that's going to be
yeah,
the final one.
yeah, that is, and exactly, but maybe they'll inform us of what the lineup is, as at least they've been
Hopefully.
doing. It's I know we ask a lot here at the Ball is Round. That being said, I think looking at the composition from the Colorado match, it appeared like that if we look outside of the duos, if you will, in the midfield, it looked as though the starting 11 for the Colorado match was like very close to what a true starting 11 on paper at least should look like, right? Because if I find it again, we had Serrois in net, um, we had Waterman, Sosa, and Corbo in the defense.
In the
Rahima
back line, right?
Edwards, pardon?
I said back line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, then Edwards, Saliba, and Chouanière tandem. Lassiter, I think, was on the right, which we said is not really the dream, but so be it. We had Duke and Yankov with Kokoro up top. So that to me reads like a starting 11.
Yeah.
More or less like a starting 11. So to answer
I
Michael's
can't.
question in a very roundabout way, using that one piece of information, I will say yes.
It's gonna be interesting if Piet and Wanyama is on the bench. Now, I like the fact that if you are playing that way, you're playing with four central midfielders
Yeah.
with Duke, Yankov, Chouanière, and Saliba, and that creates a lot of play in very tight spaces,
Yeah.
which could be very interesting and very hard to counter for a team if they're able to find themselves very often. If they're able to move and to learn the way they move the off the ball movement of each other. I think that's going to be very, very interesting if they're able to do that.
Yeah.
Now, I think we're going to see a lot of rotations this year. So I don't think that we're going to see an actual starting 11 in a way. But I do feel that we're going to have two duos. And yes, one is Chouanière Saliba and the other one is Piet Wanyama. Depending on if you want to be conservative or not, you can play either or, which I think is going to be very interesting. Pat Bernier, Capi, said that he got the information that yes, they're going to play with two midfielders, central midfielders. So it is going to be a double pivot. So not a double pivot as two defensive midfielders, but two central midfielders in a certain way. Maybe one is going to be a number 6, one an 8. Maybe both are going to be the number 6. Maybe both are going to be number 8s. And I think that's how Laurent Courtois is going to be able to play with. He's going to
Yeah.
be able to play with the roles of those central
Yeah,
midfielders
and I'm
that he
sure like
puts on the
different
pitch.
matches are also going to require, let's face it, when you're up against a Hani Mukhtar, you might want somebody a little, just a little more gritty and ball winning in there,
Yeah, yeah, I
So
agree.
I'm sure as well certain matches, certain opposition will kind of dictate his choices to a degree.
Exactly. So let's
Okay.
wait and see. I still feel that we need a Pietro or Wanyama on the pitch.
It would feel
Just the
safer.
Yeah, and the veteran presence is important. The
Mm-hmm.
leadership that
Very
they
true.
bring is important too. So I think we still need them, but from time to time we might see them, both of them on the bench too. So very exciting beginning of the season. I think it's going to be in Orlando next the week after the 24th, right? Is it
Yes.
24th?
The
Yeah,
week
the
after
24th.
next.
Exactly, the week after next. So that's it for CF Montreal for today. I don't know if you have anything else to
No,
add, Eve.
I don't.
Good. Let's dive right into the women's national team.
Mm-hmm.
So many important and news have come out in the last week or so. There's a lot to say, a lot to say. So we're going to try to be as concise as possible. Let's start with, first of all, Beth Priestman announcing two things. The first thing that she announced is a pre-camp before the Gold Cup, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But let's start first with the final roster of the W Gold Cup. So I think we have it here. So let's go by position. Of course, I think it's going to be better to go by positions. So in as goalkeepers, we're going to have Sabrina D'Angelo, Lisiane Prou, and Kaylin Sheridan. Sheridan will be, I think, the number one, like usual.
Mm-hmm.
Defenders are going to be Kadisha Buchanan, Gabrielle Carl, Sydney Collins, Vanessa Gilles, Ashley Lawrence, Jade Riviere, Jade Rose, and Shalina Zadorsky. Midfielders, we're going to have Simi Ojo, Jessie Fleming, Julia Grosso, Quinn, and Olivia Smith. And up front, we're going to have Jordan Heidema, Chloe Lacasse, Clarissa Larisi, Adriana Leon, Michelle Prince, Deanne Rose, and Evelyn Vian. What do you think about the final roster of Beth Priestman, knowing that she had so many choices and
Yeah.
she had to take decisions?
Yeah, I think she undoubtedly had some really hard decisions to make, and when speaking to the press about some of those decisions, she made some comments because I think I was really hoping after the form that Marie-Yasmine Alidou has been in with Benfica this season, I was really hoping that she would get an in, particularly as NWSL is not in the full season swing. And I'm starting to get the impression that maybe Bev Priestman just doesn't rate the Portuguese league terribly highly, even though Alidou is still playing in Champions League, which if you don't rate that
But she
highly, then
did.
I don't know
But
what to
she
tell
did
you.
choose Olivia Smith. She did choose Olivia Smith that plays in
Yeah,
the Portuguese league. So
unless she's I mean, obviously they play different positions. And I think probably striker is a more open position right now than the midfield because I think Bev Priestman does have her kind of group of confidence, if you will. Unfortunately, or fortunately,
but But she did change also Clarissa Larisi. Like she brought Clarissa Larisi that
that
was left out
yeah,
quite a few squads. So yes, she does have maybe a core in a certain way, but it's not all set in stone. So why not Alidou? I think she said something very interesting regarding Alidou. She
mhm.
said in with the Canadian national team where we want to see Alidou is in midfield. But right
Yeah,
now, she's not playing in that position. She's playing up top, and I
yeah.
have too many choices up top. And for me, those are, you know, in front of her in a certain way. So she wants to see her play in midfield.
I know.
It's hard though, because you're performing as a striker, you're doing
Yeah,
very, very well. and then you're being told, yeah, but you're not playing in the position that I wanted you to play.
Yeah, no, it frustrates me. And, knowing that we've seen Bev Priestman kind of shift players around even within her own between lineups between striker and, winger and midfielder, attacking midfield at least. Like I said, it felt a bit disingenuous as a comment to me. I wasn't there for it. I wasn't believing it. Sorry, not sorry.
Good. It's gonna be interesting, I think, to see how he's gonna be able to manage all that. Is there anybody else that you would have liked to her to call up?
That I think is probably the most glaring absence from the squad for me.
No Janine Becky, in your opinion?
Janine Becky is coming back from her massive ACL injury that completely destroyed her season last year. Bev Priestman also commented on that, and I think she's just not quite ready. And, in a tournament, we can't just bring players in because we like them. A roster spot is a roster spot at the end of the day. So if you're not quite ready, if you're not quite back to full fitness, then that's okay.
Yeah, but don't you want to prepare your team for the Olympics too, like in a certain way? And don't forget that for the Olympics, you only have 18 players that you can pick up. So, by not selecting Janine Becky in the final 23, you're surely not gonna select her in the 18.
I'm struggling here with this one because I don't understand why you would bring a player who, based on the assessment of the coaching staff, which again, I just said I disagreed with their assessment of another player. So I guess take the assessment with a grain of salt. I don't understand why you would use a roster spot on a player who you have no reasonable expectation is going to play, given, occasionally this does happen when there are young players who you're trying to bring in and integrate into the team because you see them as having a very long-term role with the squad, right? But Janine Becky, we know her role within the squad already. I'm sorry, but I can't get on board with this.
But you saw it in the AFCON right now with the Ivory Coast that won the AFCON today.
Mm-hmm.
The two main players that were like Sebastian Haller and Adingra, both of them were injured,
right,
and were called up being injured.
Yes,
and both of them scored in the final. So
yes,
all I'm saying is, Janine Becky, her importance in the national team is already proven, right? We know what she can bring, right? We know her veteran presence, what she's able to bring on and off the pitch too.
Yeah, I'm not denying that, but then I think you would almost make the same case for Desiree Scott, who also had a significant injury and missed the overwhelming majority of the last season, and as a veteran presence.
But Desiree Scott is 36. Janine Becky is 29.
Okay.
Janine Becky is here to stay for at least 4 or 5 years still.
Okay.
Desiree Scott is
okay. I'll give you that one. Yeah. Okay, but perhaps the Ivory Coast coaching staff assessed that there was a reasonable possibility that those players might be fit by the final. Perhaps the women's national team coaching staff assessed that there's not a reasonable possibility that Janine Becky would be reasonably fit to play a role, even if it weren't until the final.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. For me, I would have. I don't think that if I look at all the strikers that I have, like Jordan Heidema, Chloé Lacasse, Clarissa Larisi, Adriana Leon, Michelle Prince, Diane Rose, Evelyn Vian, I don't think all of them will get minutes. So
probably not. Yeah. Or maybe not, I should say. I truly don't know.
I'm pretty sure they're not all going to have minutes. So at that point, using a roster spot for someone that's not going to have minutes, but also that's not going to bring anything off the pitch because, someone that's new like this is not going to bring a lot off the pitch. And replacing, one of these by someone that can bring that extra leadership in the dressing room, that extra, I don't know, that extra experience in the dressing room.
I'm struggling with this one, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not saying that that's what I would do. I'm just, playing devil's advocate in a certain way because I feel that she could have been selected, and
Okay.
I would have seen her, and I wouldn't be very surprised if she was selected. But you know what? Decision to Beth Priestman. We do have a question from Rhonda,
Okay.
depending on the national team. I think that's going to be very interesting, and it's going to be able to help us carry the discussion a bit further. What faith do you have in Priestman's ability to recognize, integrate, and capitalize on developing scoring talents like Hady do? Second question: Does Priestman place personal preference for players above consistent performance when selecting tournament squad? Is underperformance rewarded? Eve, I'll
feel
let you
like
answer.
yeah, I feel like I may have answered the first question already. And I was not very impressed with the decision or the reported reasoning behind it. So I hope, Rhonda, that my comments on the Ali Dunan call address question number one. Question number two, I'm getting kind of close to thinking that, to be honest with you, there are several players who haven't consistently performed with this national team, who even haven't consistently performed with their clubs, who get call-ups, match in and match out, or a tournament in and tournament out, whatever it is. While other players who seem to be and or who are granted, other players who are less consistent but are granted starting positions over players who are just completely on fire. I understand that there's chemistry, that there are things off the pitch that we don't see, but I don't know. It's hard to consistently see, outside of friendlies at least, obviously, where everybody could be rotated in and rotated out, such a small number of players truly dominating all of the playing time, especially, coming off the back of catastrophic performances or being out of season or whatever it is. I am starting to lean toward the fact that she has a group of confidence, and kind of that group is, their form, their, how things are going for them and what have you aren't necessarily as important as, I guess, the vibe or the chemistry or whatever non-tangible Bev Priestman sees in that group.
I think it's a bit of both, in my opinion. If you look at the strikers up front, Evelyne Vian is performing, Diane Rose is performing, Adrienne Leon with Aston Villa is doing very well. Clarissa Arisi is doing very well. Chloe Lacasse is doing very well with Arsenal. And you have the other side of the medal with Jordan Heidemann, Michelle Prince, that right now are in the off season and didn't really perform very well with the national. Michelle Prince did perform very well with the national team in the last few outings. So that's in the strikers. If you see the midfielders, Simi Awujo has been awesome. Jessie Fleming has been awesome. Juliette Grosso has been awesome. Olivia Smith has been awesome with their club, of course, but also with the national team. Quinn, it's hard to find someone of their profile. And I think that's the only profile that we have like
I
that.
would agree with you.
Squad.
I would say Quinn's profile is unique within the squad for sure.
And then, as you can see, the central defenders, there's nothing much to say from the selections of defenders.
No, I agree there as
well. So the only, I'm trying to read between the lines of Rhonda's question. Is it Jordan Heidemann that she's talking about? Is it Michelle Prince? I'm not really sure.
Is it someone else entirely?
Is it someone else entirely? I'm not really sure. I have a feeling that, yes, there is a bit of personal preference and there is a bit of, the performances, and that's completely normal. I'm gonna give you one example. And I think I already gave it quite a few times here on the bonus round. Didier Deschamps. Didier Deschamps is the French national team coach. Okay, this guy believes in his group. He doesn't believe in players. He believes in groups, and it happened quite a few times. He's been, I think, the national team coach for 12 years? I'm not sure. Like for a long time. He's been there for 10, 12 years. And quite a few times he called up to World Cups players that were injured for the whole season,
Yeah.
or players just because he wanted to make sure that the group atmosphere is maintained,
Yeah.
and that he wanted to make sure that people could live with each other very well, that the
Mm.
atmosphere during those very stressful times was going to be good. And I think it's important for a national team coach to recognize that, and I think Priestman does recognize it in a certain way. So
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
personal opinion regarding it.
Yeah, and that is that is, I think, a decent point. Like I said, I'm still a little bit iffy on with in my feelings on some of the call ups versus non calls. But I will say that you did make a good point regarding just sort of the group dynamic, and that does have to play a factor in the coach's considerations. So
Exactly. So
perhaps there are things about the dynamic that we don't know about. Perhaps there are players who don't work as well.
exactly, and I look at Maria Yasmin Aidou, okay, and I'm like, okay, if she was here, since Bev is treating her as a midfielder, who could have been, who could have she replaced?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, no one. We need Olivia Smith, we need Quinn, we need Julia Grosso, we need Jessie Fleming, and we need Simia Ucho. So as a midfielder, I don't see her in this, even if she is in a good form. As a striker, though, as I said, yeah, maybe she could have taken the place of Prince, of Larissi, of Haidema, but Prince has been so important within Beth Priestman's system. Haidema is a player that it's hard to find that profile of tall player that's able to play nice headers and stuff like that. And Clarissa Arisi has been good, also has been in very good form too in Sweden. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. It's
Yep.
hard to it's
It's not
hard
it's
to
not a
really
job I
blame it.
envy.
Yeah, it's hard to blame anything on and to put
Yeah.
to blame anything on Priestman. It's a choice that she took and she made. And you know what? It does make sense, even if it's not the choice that I would have taken. It does make sense in a certain way.
All right.
So moving on, I want to talk about the pre-camp because I think that's going to be very interesting too. I love that. I love that idea because at one point, remember, Eve, we said that Canada Soccer didn't have funds to do a camp. Now they have a pre-camp ahead of the camp, which is really
Is it because
nice,
the
I
men didn't
think.
have a camp in January? Did they take the funds from there?
I don't know, but I think it's very
Well, whatever. We'll
interesting.
take it. We'll take it.
I think it's very interesting. And you have three players that have been called up in the pre-camp
Mm-hmm.
that will not stay with the team during the
Yeah.
competition. You have Laurence Gladou, who's a Quebecer that plays
Mm-hmm.
with University of Pennsylvania Athletics as a goalkeeper. We have Megan Reed that plays with Angel CDFC in the NWSL. She's
Mm-hmm.
27. She's a defender. And you have Desiree Scott, that's of course 36 and has tons of experience and plays with the Kansas City Current in the
Mm-hmm.
NWSL too. Um, how important is it to have those three players in that pre-camp? Do you see some kind of importance in a certain way, or you don't?
Um, I think it's interesting. Obviously, talking about missing players with leadership and whatnot, I think Desiree Scott is one of those tremendously impactful players in terms of leadership with the squad. So it's nice to see her reintegrating. Even if she's not going to play a role, I would assume it's because she's just not 100% there yet. But I think it's all well and good to participate. As for the other two players, obviously these are two players who we really don't know very much about. But particularly Laurence Gladou, I think could be very interesting because for me, kind of when a player is like 26, 27 years old, if they and also been playing in NWSL, which is a pretty accessible league, if they haven't been called by now, I'm kind of like a little bit curious as to why. But yeah, the other player, always curious to see, because we have seen on occasion players make a pre-camp and then later on they eventually segue into a national team role.
Yeah.
So perhaps this is the beginning of something interesting.
Yeah, Laurence Gadou, from what I hear, from what I see, I'm trying to find her age and I can't. But she seems very, very young, like 16 or 17
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something like that. So she might be the future of Canada in between the pipes. So hopefully we'll see her more often with the national team and called up from time to time. But I think it's important for her to get within the group and get to know the players and play with them, talk with them and everything. I think that's going to be very important. And same for Megan Reid and Desiree Scott. They're going to be able to help the players prepare mentally before they start the competition. So I think that's going to be nice. And also it tells those players of Megan Reid and Desiree Scott that, guys, I didn't forget you. You are here. You're in that expanded group in case there's an injury or whatever. Be prepared. I might call you up. So I think that's also very interesting. So let's take a look at what's gonna happen during that Gold Cup. Well,
Yeah, just for context.
yeah.
Sorry, I just looked up Laurence Gladue. She's a senior in college, so I think she's a little bit older than 16, 17.
Oh, really? Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. Okay. She looks very young, but my mistake.
No worries.
My mistake. Let's look at the prelims right now because, as you know, yes, there will be the Gold Cup, and we'll talk about it a bit further. But first of all, there's prelims because there are 3 opponents that are yet to be determined, and we're going to know a bit more about them on the 17th of February. So we have Haiti playing Puerto Rico, we have Salvador playing Guatemala, and we have Guyana playing Dominican Republic. The game that you want to watch is Salvador Guatemala because the winner of that game will be in Canada's group.
Yep.
So that's going to be very interesting to watch, to see the opponents and what they're able to do. Of course, it's the bottom tier of the group. Of course, the teams that have the lowest rankings. But still, it's always interesting to know who you're going to play against. So
for sure.
Let's take a look at the competition altogether. So as you can see, you have a group stage. So the first group, the Group A, you're going to have US, Mexico, Argentina, and the winner of Guyana, Dominican Republic. You're going to have the Group B with Brazil, Panama, Colombia, and the winner between Haiti and Puerto Rico. And finally, Canada, Costa Rica, Paraguay, and the winner between Salvador and Guatemala. The first game of the Gold Cup will be on the 20th of February, so only 3 days after the preliminary games. Here are the games for Canada. So Canada will play its first game on the 22nd against either Guatemala or Salvador on the 22nd in Houston. Second game will be on the 25th, so only 3 days later, also in Houston against Paraguay. And finally, on the 28th, against Costa Rica, also in Houston. What should we expect from the women's national team with that group? Do we expect 3? Is it okay, and is it normal to expect 3 wins and 9 points?
I mean, after the World Cup, I'm like, I expect nothing. No, but in all seriousness, on paper, yes. Period.
Okay.
Period. Yeah, on paper, completely.
And what are the expectations for the Gold Cup?
Well, this is the first major tournament that Canada's played since the World Cup. So for me, this has to be kind of a tournament of vengeance, to reclaim their good name on the world stage because, in the humiliating way that they exited the World Cup in 2023. It can't look much worse than that. And I know they played some friendlies to say goodbye to Christine Sinclair, and they won, the play into the Olympics and so on and so forth. So some good stuff did happen. But as far as ability to pick up silverware, this is your first opportunity, and this is the most serious competition that you've played at since you were laughably ejected from the World Cup. So I think they need to go into this wanting to make a statement and say, we're not down and out. Like, we're not, leaving our golden era. We are still a powerhouse among national teams, and we're here to stay.
Interesting. You look at the opponents. You have the U.S., you have Mexico, you have Brazil. All very strong opponents.
Mm-hmm.
How do you rate their chances, Canada's chances in front of those three, big teams?
Well, I mean, the U.S. is obviously a well-oiled machine. They're on their home turf. Like, for me, yeah, a full advantage to the U.S. on that one. I would not expect Canada to win a game against them. I truly wouldn't. Period. Like, it's sad, but I'm just how I see it. Against Brazil, I mean, the last several times Canada has played Brazil, it's been no shortage of sample size to choose from. Typically, Canada has had the upper hand, and Brazil really also didn't have a great year for their national team last year either. So I could still reasonably see Canada edging Brazil, for sure. And Mexico is definitely coming up in the rankings. I think they're making a lot of leaps and bounds, and obviously Liga MX Femenil is also growing tremendously as a league where a lot of their players evolve. I could see that one kind of being like a wild card match, and maybe Mexico kind of being the dark horse and giving Canada a scare. But I do think, at least on paper, Canada should still have the upper hand over Mexico.
Interesting. So let's. I think we covered everything regarding the national team for now. I think we can go for social media unless you have anything else to add.
I don't think so. I'm really, 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 really excited for this one to start. So
yeah, same.
Just gonna be hoping next week. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. There's only one last thing that I wanted to talk about. Just quickly. Oh, you know what? We'll talk about it in social media. Let's go.
Okay. Sorry. All right, you ready?
Yeah, so let's start with social media. I'll start with number 4, if you don't mind, Eve, because it's a good transition.
Yes, I wondered if you were going to bring this up.
Our past segment. Annabelle Chukwu played the first half of the U17 in a 4-1 win over Hady. So Canada won the 3rd place match against Hady. But we talked about Mexico. We talked about, there's a few stories, but let me talk about this one. The other story is going to be in another tweet.
Oh, story. Okay. Then I will keep my thoughts to myself.
The problem that we have is that Canada has always been fighting for the gold medal game in CONCACAF in all, age groups. And right now, it seems that they're not anymore. They're 3rd behind Mexico. Mexico won against Canada in the semifinal. Yes, in penalties, with a great performance from the goalkeeper that was named, the Mexican goalkeeper that was named the best goalkeeper of the tournament in the U17. But how difficult is this? How bad is this for Canada to be completely surpassed by Mexico in the women's game?
Well, it's not surprising. It's at the youth level. Hady, how many times have we said on this show, like, the youth level is kind of a disaster for Canada soccer?
Yeah, but Mexico beat the US not too long ago in the senior teams.
Okay, right? But we're talking about the youth level here.
Yeah, but I'm saying that Mexico is starting to compete with the US where we're not able to compete with the US.
Yeah,
on
I
all
like.
levels,
Okay.
youth or
Yeah.
senior.
Okay. Sorry, it was a little harder to follow.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, for me, like this is still a scathing indictment of the lack of organization and lack of investment at the youth level, which again, as we know, that chaos, if you will, and that disorganization when it comes times for players to integrate into the senior system, that's going to impact the senior system as well, right? As other nations are kind of getting their federations a lot more in order when it comes to women's football and when it comes to youth development. So for me, like this is kind of symptomatic of the disaster that Canada Soccer is right now. We also just saw one of the board of directors who resigned as a volunteer, and he said soccer is not the first thing on the mind of people at Canada Soccer right now. I am paraphrasing that, but that was essentially the gist of his statement. And yeah, I'm not surprised to see Mexico coming along and growing by leaps and bounds. And we know how important soccer is to that nation. So I'm not remotely surprised. And
Yeah.
like I said, in conjunction with Canada Soccer's hot mess right now, I'm not surprised. Like this doesn't surprise me remotely.
And also with the women's game growing so much in Mexico,
Absolutely.
like the professional league, I think they had at one point a game with 60,000 people. Like this is how big women's soccer is in Mexico right now. And you know
Absolutely.
what? It kind of makes sense that they move past Canada that easily. And you know what?
Yep.
Yes, we're seeing it now in the youth level, but we also saw it in with the first teams too. So I don't know. I think Mexico beat Canada not too long ago. Also, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember which tournament, but they did. So it's gonna be tough to follow through and to continue on being that I'm fighting for the top spot in CONCACAF because
Mm-hmm.
it's always been Canada and the US. And now there's a third player that's starting to be better than Canada
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes competing with the US, which was
Mm-hmm.
very difficult to do.
For
So
sure.
very interesting.
Yeah, I looked it up. The women's national team, it was in November of 2021 in a friendly that Mexico
Yeah,
beat
exactly.
Canada. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, it's not too long ago. It's 3 years
Nope.
ago. So if 3 years ago it started. Right now, it's becoming better and better. So
Exactly.
yeah, they're getting closer and closer. So very interesting. So moving on to the next tweet, you can start with the number
We
one.
can go
If you
back in
want.
numerical
Yeah,
order.
exactly. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
No worries.
So it's from Shiv612. The longest away day in the MLS in theory is CF Montreal to LA Galaxy, taking a total of 1 day and 17 hours and crossing an international border. Hats off to any fans making this mammoth trip. Unreal dedication to their club.
Is that
I
if
love
you
that
drive?
tweet. Huh?
Is that if you drive?
Yeah, I think
Do
so.
people not have access to a plane?
No, but
Yeah.
what's interesting is that this is how big MLS is. This is
Mm-hmm.
how wide
Yeah.
and varied. Like this is how long the trips are.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy. And for us, Montreal being at far east within the MLS
Mm-hmm.
spectrum, uh, how hard do you think it is for a team that's not in the middle? Like, do you think
Mm-hmm.
it's easier for a team that plays in the Midwest than for a team that plays in the East or in the West?
I don't know. For me, I think the time zones would screw me up more than like the actual distance. Being like 3 hours earlier or 3 hours later, depending on if, West Coast or East Coast. I think I would find that component more challenging than the actual distance. Although, we have heard, of course, that it is definitely not ideal for players who need to kind of get back into shape quickly between matches to be traveling for extended periods of time and to be kind of cooped up on an airplane, especially, just after a match if you need to do recovery and so on and so forth. So I guess, if you're centrally located, then most of your trips are going to be, you're going to have, say, more trips, so to speak, as far as like general distance to cover but at least they'll be shorter, which is probably an advantage when it comes to the actual physical components. That's my guess.
Interesting. Yeah,
No science.
it's also my guess. I feel that you're at advantage in a certain way if you play, if you're in the Midwest, like in the middle of
like kind of a Chicago-ish or Minnesota-ish.
More in the middle. Who's more Kansas City?
Kansas,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah, Kansas City. I think
I'm not.
you have. I'm not very good in geography in U.S. geography, unfortunately, but I think it's kind of an advantage because your distances are shorter, and also your jet lag is better because
Yeah.
you're just 1 hour, or 2 hours, 2 hours. You never have to deal with 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel your advantage in a certain way, and I never thought of that before I saw the tweet, and I find that very interesting. So I'm not really sure if there's something to look at, if there are stats that can be pulled up and produced from that, but I think that could be very interesting.
Curious, yeah. Alrighty, shall we?
Yeah, go ahead. Erica Zinn, who said we should have a bark night to CF Montreal. Her dog would love to attend the game. So as you can see, the New York Red Bulls have a few theme nights. So they have a New York Derby, the Derby. Then you have the Pride Night, and you have the Bark Night.
That's so cute.
What do you think about the themed match days? Is that something that interests you, or is it too?
Dogs.
Yeah, I understand, but like going to a soccer game at Stade Saputo, and everybody has a dog.
Oh God!
How do you?
I wouldn't watch the game and be like, "I love your dog."
So, would you like the game experience with all those dogs, with people barking around and shouting and?
I really like Hady. I really like dogs. Okay, like.
I have a phobia of dogs, by the way.
Oh, true story. I actually had one as a child. I actually had a phobia of dogs, and and I actually wound up going to a hypnotherapist to be cured of it. I'm not not a word of a lie.
Nice.
Like it was a full blown phobia, like hardcore hyperventilating, the whole 9 yards. Nice. I digress. That's like a completely off the tangent story. But if you do have a phobia, I am typically a science-based person, but it worked for me.
Okay, nice, good. So tell me, what do you think about theme night?
There are some themes that I find are fun and can be integrated really well. And there are some themes as well that I believe are important, just, for community representation. But then there are some themes that I find kind of silly and there are also themes that I think might be important to other people, but perhaps just don't speak to me. And so perhaps some of those theme nights I don't value as much just because, like I said, it doesn't speak to me because it's not something that holds a ton of interest or is something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. So for me, it kind of varies, I would say, and it kind of depends a lot. But like, how Montreal had a lot of their activation, as they call them, activities last year were like different themes. Like, so the activities that they would have like under Stade Saputo and stuff like that was kind of
cool. But that was before the game, so that's not in the
true.
game, right? So that's
true.
It doesn't. That's my only worry. I don't like theme nights that interfere with the game of football. Like, having your dog with you, it's going to change your experience of watching the game. And it's going to change your experience.
But it's your choice to bring your dog.
Yeah, but it's going to, let me finish. It's going to change the experience of everybody that's in Stade Saputo watching the game. And not only the people that bring the dog, but everybody else.
Okay.
And that's something that for me, I don't really like. Even if I didn't have a phobia of dogs.
Yep.
Like, let's say, I don't know, it's whatever. I mean, you're a cat, whatever. I don't mind cats. So,
being your cat would actually probably be less disruptive anyway.
Not really sure about that. But yeah, but I really, at the end of the day, we're here to watch a soccer game. So that's my opinion. I'm not fully against it, but it's not something that I want
Okay, fair
personally.
enough.
So this is
To each their own.
yeah, yeah. Moving on, third tweet. Okay, I I don't think we talked about this last time when we talked about Joseph
I don't think we
Martinez,
did.
but I want to hear your opinion regarding that. Joseph Martinez said, "I want to reach Chris Wondolowski. That's my thing. That's my goal. That's my dream, and help the
Mhm.
team to win trophies." Martinez right now has 105 career goals in MLS,
Mhm.
good for ninth all time. He's still 66 goals away from tying Wondolowski's record-setting mark of 171.
Yeah.
When you hear a
Mhm.
player that supposedly is finished, that's not the same player that he was before, that, all those stuff that we heard
Did you
from
see my face
everyone,
when we were like finished? And I was like, oh my god, here he goes.
do you think, well, how do you view
Okay.
that declaration?
Okay, so I'm still not convinced that he's finished. I'm truly not. So I feel like again that you're being a lot on this one, or you're being a little bit
I'm not. That's what people are saying. A
people
lot of people are saying he's finished. I'm not. It's not
people
me.
where
On social media, go and read it up.
okay. I don't maybe okay. 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 I'll just say okay. Um I don't know. I think it's very normal that a player would want to set the standard for themselves to be the absolute best. As to whether how attainable that is or not, yeah, I do think 66 MLS goals, especially as MLS continues to evolve and become a more challenging league, is a big stretch for sure. And I do find it a lofty, lofty, lofty target. Um, but I think it's completely normal that a competitor like Joseph Martinez, particularly somebody who has known the absolute pinnacle of success of this league, would aim for that and nothing else. It doesn't surprise me at all.
I mean, it surprises me because, knowing how he left Atlanta, knowing that last year, yes, he scored 8 or 10 goals. I'm not really sure how many. By the end of the day, he only scored in game 4 goals. The rest are penalties. So, um, you know, for someone to say that, for me, proved that that player is very concentrated on his goal, and
Mm-hmm.
he's very into getting back on track, getting back in shape. And usually, players that have won the MLS Cup, have been up top. Usually, when they go down, it's very hard for them to go back up
Mm-hmm.
because there's no drive. But he does have the drive. By saying that,
Yeah,
the drive is still here. So,
and that's
and
very important.
that really interests me. So,
Finally,
yeah, that
it's
really
like
interests me.
I was
What?
like, I've been like staring at you like, Hady, oh my god.
What did I do? What
I
did
don't
I
know. You're like
say?
pessimistic Eve tonight.
No, no.
I
I'm
think
just. I don't like has-beens. I don't like.
it's your word choice. I'm
Usually.
not here for, to be honest with
No,
you.
no.
Like,
I don't like has-beens. I'm not saying he is, but he could be. He's not, but he could be.
okay,
So I'm just afraid that he's gonna be a has-been. It's just me being aware of that possibility. That's all.
pessimistic. It's you being
No, me
pessimistic.
being me being aware of that
Oh,
possibility.
you're pessimistic. I called it. Too late.
So we'll see. We'll see. But I like the wording. I like the words that he chose. I like
Yeah.
the drive that he's bringing, and hopefully we'll see that translate on the pitch for CF Montreal.
All right. Next week.
Richard the Earl. The more I watch the AFC Asian Cup and the African Cup of Nations, the more I realize that Canada soccer fans, players, and organization are delusional about its place in the world hierarchy. We have so far to go before we can seriously compete on even footing. What
Nobody
do
can.
you What do you think?
Okay, wait. just moderate terms are just out the window this evening, clearly. I think that's the theme for tonight. I completely agree that those competitions are far, far, far ahead of any of the competitions that Canada Soccer, I guess the men's national team is kind of the one we're looking at here anyway. They're miles ahead of of the competitions that they are playing at. I didn't catch a whole ton of Asian of the Asian Cup just because time difference is not super feasible. But I did watch a fair bit of the AFCON, and yeah, you got to say, like, the passion that those supporters brought. Of course, sometimes like it did translate negatively, after losses and stuff like that we saw, is on another level, 100% compared to Canadian fans. Like I said, sometimes it did have a bit of a negative side to it. But that's also another side of passion. And I don't think we saw anything like devolve into violence or anything bad like that. So, just some intense booing and stuff. But yeah, to see them show up, with such passion, such intensity, you love to see it. And obviously, I think we talked a few times tonight already about what Canada Soccer is as a federation, and my position on that one sure hasn't changed. Hady?
Honestly, I watched more Asian Cup
Of course,
than
yeah.
AFCON. Yeah, by the way, the times were really fine, like 8 a.m., 10 a.m. It wasn't.
I was at work, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. So I watched a bit, but I didn't watch live. I found ways to rewatch it afterwards.
Okay,
so,
Hady sailing the high seas.
Yeah, it's just that, I was watching Lebanon most of the time in the group stage. Unfortunately, we lost against Tajikistan, and I'm still not over this, but whatever. I really liked the level of play. At the end, of course, Qatar won with 3 penalties in the final. 3-1, 3 penalties. It's always very controversial in Asia.
Yep.
So yeah, one penalty that was, yes, there, but the other 2, not really sure about it. But I loved what I saw from Jordan also. But moving on, I kind of agree on what Richard is talking about, but not fully, because don't forget that those teams are in tournament modes.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in tournament mode, it's different than when you're playing a friendly or you're playing whatever. And we haven't seen yet Canada prepare the right way for a tournament. And that's the only thing that's missing for Canada. They need an A1 national team coach that knows how to prepare for a big, big, big competition. Not a big game, a big competition. Because John Herdman did great at qualifiers. He did great at, bring Canada from point A to point B. Yes. But now we need to step up a bit more, and you need that experienced coach that's able to help Canada get prepared before a big competition. And that's what's missing right now. So I don't think that's the level of players or the quality of players that we have, because
I agree with you there.
Some very, very good players. I think the preparation, that's where we should improve. The tactical side of it, that's where we should improve. And this comes with a better coaching staff. And right now, we don't have that better coaching staff.
So what you're saying is Mauro Biello should throw the play-in match so that it buys more time for Canada Soccer to find a competent coach. And so they miss out on Copa America, which is a tournament, and then prepare for Gold Cup 2025.
Why?
I'm kidding. I'm just poking fun.
If he wins the play-in, we get a coach right away to prepare for the Copa America, right? Honestly,
Hady,
think about
we're talking about Canada Soccer here.
Yeah, no, but think about it, okay? As soon as if we qualify.
I like your use of "if." Bless you.
if we qualify to Copa America, I'm pretty sure Canada Soccer telephone is going to ring and ring and ring and ring without them doing anything. The amount
Hope
of
so.
coaches that will want to coach that team to Copa America, I think, is going to increase
I hope so.
a lot. So hopefully we'll see that. Maybe Jose Mourinho, he's free.
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
You don't want to play. You don't want to play.
That's super
Be park the
negative.
bus, park the bus, and play with Alfonso Davis up front, and that's it.
And just give the ball to Davies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nah, good things. Although it make for excellent pressers.
Exactly. I'm here for that.
All right, last tweet.
Last but not least, very, very, very interesting tweet from, again, Laura Bryan, that we always highlight because she's really good at following the women's national team. Canada Soccer just sent out this graphic. Look at Annabelle Chukwu, that played with the U17, is at 25 goals, all-time international youth goals, only 2 goals behind the GOAT, Christine Sinclair. How exciting is that? And you see the number, if you can go back on the tweet, you see number 3 is Olivia Smith, that's already with the first team, and number 4 is Jordan Heidemann, that's already in the first team. So I know that it doesn't mean anything because it's youth goals, as you're. I'm pretty
Okay,
sure
well, it doesn't mean nothing.
But it's still very exciting to have
Absolutely
such a player coming from the youth ranks.
Yeah, and I think from a relatively disappointing tournament, especially given that they did not manage to qualify to the U17 World Cup out of this tournament, which I don't think we even mentioned when we talked about the earlier stuff.
No.
Which is hugely devastating, in my opinion, for this team and the federation as a whole. It is nice to be able to find a silver lining like that. Annabelle Chukwu's name has been kind of going around, really, I think, kind of since last year, maybe a little bit in 2022. But it seems as though she's on the verge of a breakout. And obviously, she's very, very young. It would have been really, really cool, I think, to see her at that U17 World Cup. Face off against some non-CONCACAF competition. Unfortunately, that's not an option. So all we can hope is that she continues to develop. And if she wants to surpass the GOAT, we'll smile with a little tear in our eye.
No, that means that she would become the GOAT, so why not?
I know. Yeah, nostalgia.
Exactly. So hopefully we'll see Annabelle Chukwu, join the first team pretty soon and impress also, maybe, find a club in Europe or whatever and, score tons of goals and become that great striker that we're looking for right
There's
now.
There's my optimistic Hady.
And don't forget, guys, she has a twin sister, or not a twin sister, a sister also. That's another Chukwu. So that was mostly on the bench during that competition. So, but she's younger. So not a twin sister, but younger. That's also very interesting. That plays as a midfielder too. So that's going to be very interesting to follow. A good storyline. Maybe have 2 sisters play with a national team. That could be nice.
That'd be cool. So, yeah.
So let's wait and see. So Eve, we're done with today's show. I really, really liked, I think, that show. Of course, we missed Elias and his little jabs here and there. I missed them. So, guys, I hope you guys liked the show. Thanks a lot. We had quite a few people turn out. So I really love the fact that even during the Super Bowl, we had quite a few people listening to us. Thanks a lot for being here for us. I'll put the small banner because I'm not going to say it any 15 times a day anymore. But in case you want to join our Patreon, feel free to do so. We put the Patreon page if you want to join us. Of course, our content is always going to be free, but you can join us if you want to. That's it for tonight. Thank you, Eve, once more for being here with me. Thank you, everyone, for being part of the show. and see you next week for episode 167 of the Bonus Round.